I gotta say, this episode was so good, I briefly considered keeping it private and making it for Amplify members only. I think you're really going to like it. Josh Abdulla is the Chief Customer Officer at Asana. And at Asana, he oversees a global portfolio of about 170,000 customers, everything from $20 a month freelancers to multi-million dollar enterprise deals. Josh, as you'll see, talks in the language of customer success, but everything that we go through together in this episode applies directly to account managers operating at any kind of scale. What really stood out to me in the conversation was the clarity that Josh has around value and what value means for his customers. So whether he talks about his red renewals playbook for enterprise churn or the behavioral signals that he looks for in the SMB segment, he really has clarity on how to get value to his clients so that his company can be successful. And by the way, he's built systems into all of this that you're really going to appreciate learning about. So in this conversation today, we talk about the red renewal system that Josh uses to spot churn 9 to 12 months before renewal. We talk about why relationship-driven enterprise management is really powerful, but not necessarily scalable. How to coach CSMs using signals and pattern recognition in data. And we also talk about what Asana is building with their value framework and how that is really going to change his strategy for post-sales and for customer engagement. This episode is literally a masterclass in scaled account management. Let's get started with Josh Abdulla. If you're an account manager, you already know this. You're the one keeping the business running. You own the client relationships, drive the revenue, and solve the tough problems for your customers. But here's the challenge. Most companies don't give account managers the training or recognition they deserve. That's what you'll get here on the Account Management Secrets podcast. I'm Alex Raymond, and after working with thousands of account managers, I know what separates the best from the rest. In this show, we cover exactly what you need to succeed, handling tough client conversations, driving renewals and upsells with confidence, and proving your value every single day. There's no fluff, no outdated sales tactics, just real practical strategies you can use right now to grow your accounts and build a successful career. If that sounds like what you've been looking for, hit subscribe and let's get into it. Hey, Josh, great to see you. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, glad to be here.
So you are coming up on 1 year as the Chief Customer Officer at Asana. So congratulations on the milestone, on the orbit around the sun. I'm
Thank
really
you.
excited to get into this today with you because Asana is a pretty big, well-known company. So really excited to see what it looks like from the inside in terms of managing customers and managing post sales. Before that, obviously, you had an incredible career as Chief Customer Officer at LiveRamp. You were at Salesforce early in your career, so you've done a lot of stuff. You've seen a lot of very successful companies. So I want to learn as much from you as possible so that we can really give value to our audience. But I would love to just start by help us understand Asana. What is Asana? I'm sure it's more than just the first tool that comes into everyone's mind. So, what is it? What are you guys offering? How big is the customer set? What's the scope here?
Yeah. So Asana's, started out, I think about a 12, 13-year-old company now. And originally it was, very much so known for task management, project management type software. Since then, it's really grown to really be like an enterprise collaboration management platform, and or workforce collaboration management. There's a couple different terms for it. And starting out as a product-led growth company, we really start out with a lot of SMB customers, and throughout the years, and kind of grown organically. And now we've really touched the enterprise market. So as a company, we've got about 170,000 customers worldwide, which is just phenomenal. Out of that, the top 5% are what we would call corporate or enterprise customers. We have customers that spend anywhere between $20 a month with us all the way through multi-million-dollar annual contracts. So it really spreads the gamut. We've got a lot of competition in the marketplace out there. So companies like Monday.com, Smartsheets, ClickUp, Airtable, are some of the smaller ones. And then we compete with the Adobes of the world with their workforce product, with Microsoft Teams. Salesforce is coming out with collaboration product. Zoom is. So there's a lot of entrants in the market. We're lucky enough to be one of the incumbents who've been here for, like I said, over a decade. So pretty well-known brand. We're global. We've got offices in Australia, in Tokyo, in London, in France, in Dublin, in Sydney, and then all throughout the U.S.
Awesome. Very cool. So I've heard of Asana mainly, like you were saying, like, task management stuff. I always thought that the ideal customer for Asana would have been a small company, 10 people, 20 people, something like that, or even freelancers. Now, in the data that you were just sharing, you're at if 5% of your customers are enterprise, that's 8,500 enterprise accounts. That's a lot of big accounts. Question I have for you is, what was happening at Asana to make them realize, oh, we need a chief customer officer? Like this is a role that we need. We've now evolved into. What were the sort of milestones or the tipping points that made them say, we want to go fill this role?
Yeah, and I think this really just boils down to kind of a philosophy on leadership, which is when you identify a specific part of your business or a company that needs a high level of attention and focus, oftentimes it's just really helpful to have a singular leader that's kind of put in charge of that process, or part of the organization. And for us, when we look at our customer base, we have such a variety of customers. The needs of a small nonprofit here in Boulder, Colorado are very, very different to, say, a massive enterprise with hundreds of thousands of employees. And so if you try to solve the problems and how you serve those customers in a piecemeal function or in a siloed function, you're not going to be successful. And so I think Asana realized a couple of years ago, when they created this role, it's really necessary for us to make sure that we are communicating to our customer, working with our customer, engaging with our customer in a unified fashion across the entire journey that customer has with us. And oh, by the way, we need to make sure that we're doing all of those very specific things with our customer, engaging with them in the right ways at the right times, in a way that's commensurate with who they are. And so the way that we would engage with, say, a nonprofit in Boulder is going to be very, very different than the way we would engage with a large enterprise with hundreds of thousands of employees. And making sure that we have all of that under one umbrella is a really great way to make sure we're not introducing blind spots into that equation.
So, I mean, basically, a big time focus is that we want a unified customer experience to the extent possible, and we want to be as efficient as we can in our delivery. Therefore, let's put it all under one organization, into one group.
Exactly.
Okay. And one of the things I'm dying to ask you about is how you segment customers. So
Yeah.
you just said we've got 170,000 customers. You've got them in every single vertical, every geography, every company size. So they're all over the place. One of the things that I've seen so many leaders struggle with is like, how do we literally just get a handle on what are the characteristics between these companies? What are the similarities? How do we start to organize them? Because that's going to affect your team structure, your alignments, your compensation, the activities that people are doing. It's going to affect so many things. So when you show up and you think, all right, here's my 170,000 customers, what are the variables that you're looking at around segmentation? How do you start to group these together? Like, do you look at verticals? Do you look at geography? Is it company size based? Is it how much they've paid you? Like, how do you even approach that with this size of portfolio?
Yeah, it's a really interesting problem. And one of the things that I, first did when I came to Asana, and like I said, it's only been about 11 months, is because a lot of my background is enterprise. And so I looked at kind of the enterprise function first and started to really figure out what were the opportunities, what were the challenges, et cetera. And really, when you look at that, 5 to 8,000 enterprise customers that we have, the way that you manage that set of customers is really similar to how you would at any other enterprise software. you've got your verticals, and you need to be able to speak the language of your customer. So, we have a vertical segment where we have FinServ CSMs, we have nonprofit CSMs, we'll have healthcare CSMs. And why that's important is that the language of a nonprofit or the language of a FinServ company or the language of a healthcare company is embedded to how they communicate with each other. And so we need to be able to communicate with them in that same language. And that's why verticalization is so important. And so, that's one of the basic, what I call like blocking and tackling of an enterprise CSM function is understand your verticals and make sure you're attacking that appropriately. Then you look at the rest of the enterprise segment, and it's really about, what their spend is, what their footprint is, what parts of their organization are using it. And what makes Asana really interesting is that we have a lot of customer profiles that we sell into. And what I mean by that is we sell into marketers. And the solution that marketers leverage us for and what they use us for in order to gain value is very different than another profile, which would be IT. And what our IT customers use us for is a very different use case than, say, our product ICP. And so we make sure that we have sufficient capability and knowledge of these different, what we call ideal customer profiles within the customer success organization, so that, say, we're talking to a particular tech company, but they're using us within their marketing function, we'll make sure that we align a CSM that has that type of knowledge versus, say, it could be another tech company, but they're using us within their PMO or within their IT organization. That's going to be a different skill set from a CSM. So identifying what our customer profiles are and then aligning the right set of resources to those customer profiles. And that can extend all the way down to the playbooks that we use, how we think about renewal cycles, how we talk about our new features and which customers we want to prioritize for those new features. So all of that, again, is really basic blocking and tackling of the enterprise. That's where I spent my first several months. The really, really cool part about Asana, though, is in addition to the enterprise, as I mentioned, we've got 100 and anywhere between 50 and 165,000 SMB customers. And out of that, a vast majority of those customers are monthly customers. And what I mean by monthly customers, every single month, they can choose to renew or cancel their contract. And when you think about a monthly customer, the reasons why monthly customers churn are going to be very, very different than why an enterprise customer would churn. Enterprise customers churn because primarily they're not getting value out of their investment. Maybe there's a competing product that their IT team has said you now have to move to. Maybe they bought 1,000 seats at the beginning of the year, but they had a 30% RIF, so they need 30% less seats, right? These are the common reasons why enterprise customers churn. And one of the big reasons we're seeing, and I think most enterprise software companies are seeing this, is there are so many vendors out there now in every single type of customer platform there is, that IT teams are saying, hey, why do you need to have 7 different vendors, all of which do the same thing? Can you please consolidate onto maybe 1 or 2 best-in-class platforms? And so oftentimes we're the beneficiary of that. Sometimes we lose out to our competitors in that situation. But that's why enterprise customers churn. On the monthly side, it's very, very different. On the monthly side, we have to prove our value every single month to that customer. And what we've found is that if customers stay with us past anywhere between 9 to 12 months, they're locked and loaded. Any customer that's before 3 months could potentially be a churn risk. And so why do those customers churn? We've really isolated it down to 4 key reasons. One is they're very price sensitive. 2 is they need to have an excellent onboarding experience, meaning they need to know how to use your product or our product in order to get to the use case that they're looking for in a very short amount of time. 3, they need to have a great support experience, meaning I have a problem. I don't understand how to do XYZ. They need to be able to figure out how to do XYZ very, very quickly, whether that is leveraging your community, whether that's leveraging your help center, which are kind of on-demand self-service resources, or whether they're going to use your support AI chatbot or even use your ticketed support. Whatever the modality is that they're getting support, it needs to be able to answer their question very, very quickly. If they can't get that question answered, guess what? They're going to go ahead and cancel their contract and go somewhere else. And then finally, the fourth reason is they have to be able to have the features and functionality that they're looking for. So it goes price, onboarding, support, and features and functionality. What we found is that oftentimes our customers do have the features and functionality. They are available to them, but sometimes it can't be surfaced to them or they haven't found it. And so therefore, that's another reason that we kind of have to go attack that problem. Those are four different reasons then why enterprise customers churn, because enterprise customers will pay for professional services. That will help them with their onboarding experience. They will pay for a support entitlement, so they'll have a dedicated support engineer to answer all of their customer support questions. They don't have to go through an AI chatbot, or they don't have to use a self-service, process. They know what their price is. They've negotiated their price with procurement, and it's within the budget that they're looking for, so they're less price sensitive. And when it comes to product and features, oftentimes we're answering an RFP or we're doing a bake-off. And so they know that the product and features that they're looking for are available. And so when you think about the fact that you have to really attack and segment out the churn problem for monthly customers, and it's a very, very different problem to solve than enterprise, then you have to ask yourselves, well, where is the majority of my churn coming from? Because that then becomes, where do you want to invest your time and your limited resources? For us at Asana, a good percentage of our churn actually comes from the monthly business. And so
in terms of dollars or in terms of percentage?
In terms of dollars, yeah.
Okay.
In terms of dollars. And that's to be expected, because oftentimes, a monthly customer is going to use us for a project that had a defined lifetime. And then when that project's over, they don't need to use us anymore. Like that, it is part of the monthly business to have a higher level of churn. So bottom line, to kind of answer your question, how did I figure out where to kind of spend resources? Well, after I attacked the enterprise, I realized, wow, we really need to be focusing on monthly as well. We've got four key reasons that they churn: price, onboarding experience, support experience, and product and feature functionality and visibility into that. Then really spent a heck of a lot of time focusing on solving those four key issues, really figuring out the price sensitivity of our customers, and do we need to be thinking about making price changes, figuring out what the in-product onboarding experience is like, and are there opportunities to implement product nudges so that it will surface the features and functionality that we know, if our customers are using, will make us stickier to them. Looking at our support experience top to bottom and really figuring out where the friction points are in the support experience. We did a deep dive into our AI chatbot, which is the front end to our support experience, and realized that, about 40%, this is months ago, but about 40% of the time our customers weren't getting a great experience out of using the support chatbot. And if that's a monthly customer's first experience in trying to get help with us, that's likely going to result in a churn. So we spend a heck of a lot of time optimizing the support chatbot. We spend a heck of a lot of time making sure that our self-service support tools, like our help center, our academy, and our community, are really well organized and well put together. And that when somebody submits a question to the community, that it's answered quickly, and that our moderators are really doing their job. And then, it presents another challenge because we're a global company, and so we have thousands of customers all over the world. I just got back from Japan two weeks ago, and we have a big challenge there because a lot of our community needs to be translated into Japanese, and so you layer in, those types of situations as well, and it just creates a fascinating problem set that I really enjoy digging into. And the way that I think about, judging and measuring our success is, one, creating initiatives that are going to attack those top four problems on the monthly side: price, onboarding, support, feature functionality. And then, because it's a monthly business, I know exactly what percentage of my dollars will churn on a daily basis. I know the number. I know what dollars I would expect to churn on a daily basis. And so when you implement a new feature or an initiative, something that helps make support easier, something that surfaces product better, make a pricing change here, I can then see the direct impact on my monthly numbers. every single day. It's
Well,
just
yeah, I mean
absolutely
the
fascinating.
feedback cycle is so much faster in that
It's
case
so
than
much
in
faster.
enterprise, because enterprise could be
Exactly.
1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and in this case,
Exactly.
you're getting it every 30 days. In fact, every day people are making the decision
Yep.
to stay or not, right?
Exactly. And so that's what we do. One of the most important things that we did on the enterprise side, and you kind of alluded to this, like, the changes you make, you might not see for a month or for several months or even a year. I, Most CSMs will agree that at the beginning of your quarter, when you do your forecast for how much you expect to retain and how much you expect to churn, at the beginning of quarter, you should probably be within plus or minus 3% of accuracy. Meaning, if you say $100 is going to churn at the beginning of the quarter, by the end of the quarter, you should either be at 97 to $103. Like that should be the range, right? And that's because it's very hard in the enterprise to impact churn in quarter. Your churn for that quarter is pretty much baked. You can impact churn maybe a quarter out, definitely 2 quarters out, absolutely 3 and 4 quarters out. So one of the first things we did on the enterprise side of Asana is implement what we call our Red Renewals program, which allows us to identify risk quarters in advance so we can actually do something about it. It makes sure that there's no surprises in quarter or for the next quarter. It allows us to rally the company around the specific needs associated with that customer. Let me tell you, if it's a product issue, you're not going to fix that in 3 months or 6 months. So you better darn well find out that there's a product issue 12 months in advance so you actually have an opportunity to do something about it. And that was kind of the big thing that we did there.
I just want to double click on that one. So first of all, I want to step back and say you're giving us a literal masterclass in how to deal with a large, complex portfolio, how to segment it, how to triage the different sets of needs around churn and retention, and so on. So and of course, you're talking. I've got like a million questions right here, but my ears really uh, perked up when I heard you talk about the Red Renewals program. Now, a couple things that couple reasons for that. First is, I believe that an account manager, in your case, what you're calling a CSM, customer success manager, I believe that an account manager has three jobs: keep your customers, grow your customers, and no surprises. That's it. Like everything else is just things that you do to support those three
I'm
critical
going to
goals.
use that in my all hands next week. I'm
Yeah,
going to
yeah,
go.
use that. Use it in your own hands for sure. Therefore, one of the things that an account manager has to be exceptionally good at is identifying risks. And I want you to respond after I say all this and kind of tell me if this lands for you. I believe one of the biggest risks that we have is we have too many assumptions in our head about what is true versus what is actually true in the customer side. So I always recommend people get radically curious, do more question, do more discovery, like figure out what's really going on here, and question, like literally list out your assumptions and then go question them with your champion or whomever. Now, sometimes that will then surface into a risk register, which I think is what you're talking about with the Red Renewals program. So tell us more about how that works. You're starting to flag what, 6 months, 12 months out, this renewal might be at risk, and here's why. And then you're doing a SWAT team on the specific type of risk, because sometimes it's executive change, sometimes it's product usage, sometimes it's M&A activity, sometimes it's macroeconomics. There's so many risks that can hit. So I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yeah, sure. So first off, from a time frame perspective, our goal is to identify risks 9 to 12 months in advance. And bonus points if you can do it more than 9 to 12 months in
Nine to
advance,
12 months is great.
especially if you've got multi-year risk.
Yeah.
And we have some basic guidelines around when you should file a red renewal. Um, so utilization is a big one. If you are, for us, we have a statistic called 1D90, which basically means how often does the user log in every 3 months. And if our 1D90 in aggregate for a customer is less than 70%, meaning 70% of the users or less are logging in 3 months or more, then that's a risk to us. Now, the reality is it should be a risk if they're not logging in every day or they're not logging in at least once a month. But the reality is we have to draw a line somewhere, and so that's where we're drawing the line. So that's one is product utilization. The next is, and we're very lucky that we have an incredible data science team at Asana, is we have what's called an account retention score. And so the account retention score has kind of three levels to it: red, yellow, green. They made it super easy for us. If it's red, risk. If it's yellow, possibly a risk. If it's green, not a risk. So that's another variable that we use. Um, and then, the third are more qualitative things. Um, you know, you mentioned a few in your things. Is there M&A activity? Is our champion left? All of those types of things. The fourth, again, back to the quantitative, is support engagement. Are we seeing a lot of support tickets? And if so, what are these support tickets? But really, it starts out with utilization. And so 12 months out, if you look at our renewals, so this is actually the last day of Q2 for us, so we're starting Q3. So if you look at our red renewals for Q2 of next year, Q1 of next year, the vast majority of the reason codes are going to say product utilization issue, product utilization issue, product utilization. And that's okay. Because every 2 weeks we go and we work with the CSM leaders and the CSMs and we interrogate all of the new red renewals that have happened. And we ask them what's going on at this particular one. Have you talked to the customer? When was the last time we had a QBR? When was the last time we had an onsite? When was the last time you talked to your champion? And ask all of these same questions over and over and over again to really figure out what the true reason code is. Because product utilization being low is a symptom, not a cause in most cases. Sometimes it is a cause because maybe there was a riff. So they've lost it. One would say then the riff was the cause. But bottom line, it's oftentimes it's a symptom, not the cause. And so we help interrogate and figure that out. But once the red renewal is there, and we've got renewal manager coverage, so we have CSMs and renewal managers because we have such a large number of renewals. We actually have a team just focused on renewals. If we have renewal manager coverage on a certain customer, that means that customer has a salesperson attached to it, who might or might not be engaged because maybe they're looking at other customers. It means that they often will have either a scale, an offshore, or an onshore CSM associated with it. So once that red renewal occurs, and we use Asana for this, it actually creates a specific task within Asana, and it brings in all of the members of the account team, and then we are able to essentially look at all of the details of that red renewal and see all of the updates of that red renewal all the way through to the renewal process. And so every day I go to a folder in my Asana and I click on red renewals, and it shows me all of the new red renewals that have been submitted. And what's really cool about it, this is kind of me plugging Asana, I click on summarize this via AI, and our AI within the application will then summarize every single red renewal. What are the actions that are needed? Where do they need help? Where do we need to get executive engagement, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's that process that's worked really, really well. When I first came here 12 months ago, my first quarter, we were surprised by some very, very large churns that, just we weren't forecasting, we weren't on top of. Now I'm proud to say there are no surprises. We know them, we're ahead of them, we know how to engage our execs with the customer, et cetera. And so I would advise anybody to make sure that you've got a really, really good process for identifying risk 3 to 4 quarters in advance in the enterprise, because that's the only way you're going to be able to mitigate that risk.
Oh, I mean, look, what you just said is 100% best practice, if not like quite a bit beyond where most people are today. But the idea that your post-sales leader should be reviewing a list of potential issues as far ahead in advance, and we have a structured way to see the data and see the information and analyze it, and that we're then doing something about it. So we're not just looking at a dashboard, we're then doing something about it and taking actions to say, here's what I'm going to do to potentially mitigate the risk, is something far, far, far too few people are doing. But I think that sounds like a tremendous activity on the Asana team side. Question for you, Josh, is what have the results been? So what are you now seeing? How are people coming off the red list because they get to green? Because actually Mike Rapp from IntelliPeer, who was on the podcast very recently, he runs a get to green meeting, which the idea is to do that. So are you seeing people getting to green? Are you still seeing churn even when they're on the red list? Like what have you seen in terms of results?
Yeah, well, you're always going to see churn even though they're on the red list. You're never going to get a 100% hit rate. So I think it's really important to be realistic about what's doable and what's not doable, number one. Number two, absolutely you see customers move to green. But I think the biggest kind of indicator of results is when you start to see red renewals across your customer base. So we've got, anywhere between 5,000 to 8,000 enterprise customers. So at any given time, we've got anywhere between 300 and 700 red renewals open. you start to be able to draw patterns from that data. That becomes a large enough data set that you can draw patterns. For instance, I can tell you exactly the amount of ARR associated with red renewals today that are associated with a specific integration issue we have with a third party platform. And I can take that to my product team and I can say, these are all of the customers, these are all of the issues, and this is the specific integration to that third party platform that's causing these renewals to be at risk. And then the product team can then make a really clear decision related to prioritization. Do I build this new feature today? Or do I divert those people so that I can fix this to save this ARR? And it becomes a math equation. Is the amount of ARR I expect to get from this new feature plus or minus? And in 90% of the time, our product team is going to do the right thing for existing customers. In the 10% of the time they don't, it might be because fixing that particular issue or doing what they want us to do in the product might be incompatible with our overall strategy. And in those cases, we can go back to the customer and at least have that conversation with them. But in the absence of that, they'll fix the issue. And so being able to pattern match across all of these and then be able to create a holistic story. If I go to product and say, this one customer needs this issue fixed, likely we're not going to get it fixed. But these 20 customers with this aggregate ARR need it fixed, absolutely, that's a much better story to tell. And I always like to say it is the chief customer's officer's responsibility to fix retention. But it is their responsibility to make that everyone else's responsibility in the company, right? I can't go fix the product. I can't go solve the pricing issues. I can't go fix in-product onboarding. But what I can do is draw sunlight on those specific issues, take those issues to the right leaders, get their buy-in by showing them the data, and the red renewals process is instrumental in that.
Yeah, no, I mean that's amazing. So you can surface the information. The people may not be aware of it. So a big part of the job is to be the internal evangelist for the customer, right? And you're basically saying, I've got access to all this information. Let me make sure that other responsible parties inside the company see what I see so that we can then make the best decision to help the whole company win. Now, when you're looking at the Red Renewals program, here's a question I got for you. When you're looking at this program, how much of the resolutions or the risk mitigations, how often do they come down to what you were just talking about? Like we have a product issue, we have an integration thing, we have something like that, versus we're just not doing the blocking and tackling of account management right. We don't know the stakeholders. We haven't done a QBR. We don't have an account plan in place, that sort of stuff. Like how much of it is kind of behavior that the CS or account management team can then go execute versus product stuff?
Yeah, more of it is behavior than I would like, definitely. But but what's helpful about the red renewal process is that when these behavioral issues surface, it gives me and it gives my leadership team the ability to do what they need, which is coach their people and make them better. It also allows us to identify the folks that don't have challenges or issues relative to doing the basic blocking and tackling and recognize those folks for their great work as well. You know, customer organizations are all about people. And yes, there's going to be a massive AI shift in the way that we work with our customers. But ultimately, at least at the enterprise, and at least for the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years, having that personal touch coming from a human is still going to be a huge way that we drive success for our customers. And tools like the red renewal process and others that we leverage internally really help to surface the high performers and the performers that need a little bit of coaching. And so whenever I see a situation or we interrogate a CSM on this red renewal and we're trying to figure out why utilization is low, because that's always the first tip of the spear, right? Well, when was the last time we had a QBR? What happened to our stakeholder? When was the last time you reached out to the stakeholder? When was the last time we were on site? Just the very act of doing that interrogation, not in an accusatory way, but in a coaching style, That very act helps that CSM gets better at their job because they know that the next time we're going to see a red renewal, by the way, which are automatically created if it's a utilization based issue, that they know that they're going to have the answers to those questions. And hopefully those answers are going to be, last week versus never.
So what are the other things that you're expecting the enterprise CSMs to do? I want to turn to the actual behaviors here. So you've mentioned QBRs with a portfolio of 5 to 8,000 enterprise clients. That's 20 to 34,000 QBRs a year. I assume we're not doing that volume, so maybe we're not doing these quarterly. But are you doing those? Are you doing and the reason I'm asking is there's a lot of conversation inside the Amplify community, for example, with other folks I'm talking to around, is the traditional QBR still the way to go? Do we need 90 minutes every 90 days? Or are there better ways to do this? I had someone on the podcast, Robert Spruill from Safety Chain Software, saying he does 30-minute executive results reviews, right? And like that works for him. So what's your philosophy on that? And what part of the status quo or traditional account management slash CS philosophy are you keeping, and what are you evolving?
Yeah, well, let's first take a step back and talk about, the 5 to 8,000 enterprise customers and how we actually break that down. So we have what we call a top accounts team, and this is named accounts. These are going to be our largest customers. These are going to be all names that you have heard of, oftentimes global, oftentimes with anywhere between a 500 seat to several thousand seat footprint of Asana. Those are going to be our top accounts, of which we have about 30 of those. Then we've got our named accounts, and this is going to be accounts, and it's all based on spend, that spend, anywhere between 200K plus with us in AMER and maybe 150K plus with us in EMEA, APAC, and Japan. And, that is the ratio of CSMs to named accounts is about 10 to 15. The ratio of CSMs to top accounts is anywhere between 7 to 10. Okay. And then we've got our portfolio accounts. These are going to be accounts in AMER that spend anywhere between 50,000, no, I think it's 80,000 in AMER, all the way to 150,000. And that's going to be a ratio of about 50 to 1 per CSM. Okay. And then we've got our scale accounts, which is going to be anywhere between $30,000 of spend to $75,000 of spend to $80,000 of spend.
But there's still the scale accounts are still in the enterprise.
Yeah, exactly. And these are going to be 1,000 to 1 ratio. Okay, so you got to scale CSM. In the way we do scale, I like say there's 1,000 to 1 ratio. The way we do scale, it's a pooled model. So you don't actually have a book. Our portfolio CSMs do. Scale CSMs, they essentially are, we can send out requests to those CSMs in an automated fashion, and they know they need to go engage with an account and use a leverage.
But they're catching pitches all day, is what they're doing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Right. So I just wanted to help you understand that the basic blocking and tackling is really limited to the top accounts and the named account and in a little bit of the portfolio. Everything underneath that is going to be reactive based on either signal that we're getting from the customer, signal that we're getting from sales, or signal that we're getting automatically that's being surfaced through the product and through other automations that we have.
Great. Okay. So we're not at risk for doing 20,000 QBRs a year.
Thank God. Now, as it relates to QBRs, I actually tend to agree that I think the old form of QBR, hey, we need to meet with you on a quarterly basis and we need to go through your utilization and your use cases and all of that stuff, I think that is antiquated. And what I really think we have to do is we have to move to more of a value framework. And what I mean by that is customers really care about not the fact that they're using your product, they care about the value that they're getting from your product. And so we are really focused today on leveraging customer value plans where we are trying to identify the specific use cases and the specific value that they're getting from those use cases. And when I think about a QBR, it's really a report back to them saying, here's where we thought we were going to be from a value derivation perspective, and here's where we really are. The problem with that, it's really, really hard. It's really hard to say this is the quantifiable value that we're getting. And so we're now today really pushing our pre-sales and our sales team to try to identify that upfront in the sales cycle so that we understand what are the value drivers that we need to be able to work towards and what is the value creation that the customer thinks they're going to get. We know that from day one so that as we establish the program with them from a CSM perspective, that we know what the goal is that we're working towards versus trying to figure that out 3 or 6 months into our relationship with them. We're just starting that process now. So come back to me in a year and I'll tell you how that's going. But what I
And so
can
is the
say is,
value creation like, do you think that this is going to be more like a, let's say, like a checklist, like a pick list of 10, like there's the 10 most common and we're just sort of picking them, or are they going to be unique for every single customer and then we're tracking that?
as of today, they're going to be pretty unique. They're going to be developed on a customer by customer basis. Over time, we should be able to do some pattern matching and identifying here's the typical value drivers that we're going to be able to use, which will then allow us to use the same framework downstream into the portfolio process and possibly even to scale. But for now, we're learning as we go. We're learning how to identify and articulate the value that Asana is providing our customers. And the reason why it's a little bit challenging for us is one, Asana is a platform that enables you to do what you want to do. And what I mean by that is when you use a platform, let's just say I worked at a company called ExactTarget. ExactTarget was acquired by Salesforce, but what ExactTarget did was email marketing. You buy ExactTarget for a purpose of sending emails to your customers. That's why you're using ExactTarget. Now, you might be sending emails to your customers to help them with password resets, or you might be sending emails to your customers because they had a shopping cart that they abandoned and you want to see, hey, you left this in your shopping cart. But there are specific use cases and it's quite limited in that specific thing. Whereas Asana, you can use Asana to do any number of things, any infinite number of things. And while there are a discrete set of use cases, it is in the hundreds. So, we really have to get very good upfront at divining the use case and the value that they're going to get from that. And so that's an evolution that I'm going to be focusing on in H2 of this year.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. The value framework, you can come back on the show next year in 2026 and we can talk through that. Now, as the chief customer officer, uh, when you're working with the CSMs for the top accounts and the named accounts, like what are you expecting them to be doing? Like what, you mentioned coaching, you mentioned the fact that the red renewals process allows you to see where things are working, where they aren't. But like what's your baseline expectation
Yeah.
for what these people are doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I have an expectation that a top accounts or a named CSM has a top to bottom understanding of their account inside out. Anything that's happening at the company at a macro level, anything that's happening with their specific end user base or their champion at a micro level. That's just basic blocking and tackling. You got to understand your account inside out, and you got to have that information at your fingertips. I don't expect you to have it memorized, but you need to be able to have frameworks and an organized process so that when I pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm actually going to have dinner with so and so customer 2 weeks from now, that it doesn't take them, hours upon hours to get the information. It's right there at their fingertips. So being able to get and have that information at their fingertips means that they are engaging with that customer on a regular basis and knowing how to engage with that customer in order to capture that information, what their use cases are, when they're interacting with support and having to deal with support, why they're interacting with support if they are, do they need to get themselves involved in it, in anything, identifying new use cases, identifying interesting usage patterns, identifying what other platforms that we are actually tangentially related to or potentially competitive with that they might be using, and how we might be able to leverage that information to try to displace that particular competitor. So having a relationship with their champion is the most important thing because it allows them to gather that critical information and make sure that they've got that information at their fingertips so that when I have an interaction with them, I can be able to get to it on a regular basis. But that also helps them keep a pulse on that customer and will be able to help them identify risk. For instance, oh, I found out that you also have smart sheets. What are you leveraging it for? Why are you using smart sheets versus Asana? Is there any threat there? Do we need to talk to you about potentially demoing Asana in front of those users that are using smart sheets? Are you getting better value out of smart sheets? Can I introduce you to our product team members in order to help them understand why you're getting better value so that potentially we can fix challenges in our product. These are all of the types of conversations that I expect a CSM to be having with their customer on a regular basis, in addition to the basics of looking at their utilization patterns, looking at their support ticket platform patterns, identifying when their renewal is, and working with the renewal manager to forecast potential renewal risk. It's really the relationship building that is so important. Um, and that's really why you have CSMs with these top accounts, is to build that relationship so you've got the eyes and ears on the ground and you know exactly what is going on at all times with that customer.
Dynamite. I mean,
And by the way, that's not scalable.
no, but it doesn't. I mean,
It's not
but
supposed to be,
right. I mean,
right?
if you look at your top accounts and your named accounts, what percentage of all revenue goes through them? A lot.
A significant amount.
Right.
It's not scalable, but there's a significant ROI on
Right.
building that
And then
relationship.
even more when you dig into the profits, not just the revenue that's generated across different
Absolutely.
segments. I would guess that most profits come from there too.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Awesome. Well, hey, Josh, this is a fantastic conversation. This is this is like a master class. I think you just gave us like months and months of stuff in 40 something minutes. Incredible to have you on. Thanks so much for joining me.
Awesome. It was a great time, Alex, and great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Thanks, man.
Thank you.